Ladies and gentlemen, we are the Moorish Society. Now, before we get to the point that we want to make on the issues of law, we first want to state the following. Now, from what we've seen in the media is that the public are generally frustrated with the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and that they were looking to replace him between now and the next general election. And so what the public are about to witness is the media trying to sell to the public this woman, this MP, who is Shabana Mahmood, who they're going to try and sell to us as the next Prime Minister or leader of the Labour Party. Then, ladies and gentlemen, they're going to tell us about how she's the daughter of immigrants who came to this country to make a better life for themselves, and she grew up in that environment and became an MP, and now she's the first woman Pakistani Prime Minister. How many times have we heard this story? Her coming from that background doesn't mean she's qualified to do the job, and doesn't mean that this country would be run any better than it's currently being run. Bearing in mind, ladies and gentlemen, for how long she has been a member of Parliament. And it is these MPs that's currently run this country into the ground. So they are the least qualified to fix the current problems the United Kingdom faces. Now, this MP is from the area of Birmingham, a member of Parliament in the area of Birmingham, and her constituency, from what I understand, is Ladywood. And unfortunately for her, we are the constituencies of Ladywood, Birmingham, England, the United Kingdom. And from what we can see, ladies and gentlemen, is that Birmingham is being run very badly. And when we look at this city, it's like looking in a toilet with diarrhea. Certain parts of Birmingham is basically Pakistan. Now, if I wanted to live in Pakistan, I'll get on a Pakistani airline and travel there. And what we've got, ladies and gentlemen, is areas totally turned into Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen. Now, just in case anyone thinks I'm being racist towards the Pakistanis, well, that's your opinion. The fact of the matter is that is a fact. Now, it wouldn't be so bad, but the fact of the matter is these people do not integrate. They do not integrate. And they call out the white Europeans as being racist when they don't allow Pakistanis to be in their business or to be part of the United Kingdom. And yet when we go to certain areas, in the area of Birmingham, these Pakistanis do not have any other race working in their shops. They do not have any other race working in their business. It's all Pakistanis, ladies and gentlemen. And then they got the cheek and audacity to complain about white people being racist, when in fact they're just as racist as the people they're claiming to be racist. And they are a guest in the United Kingdom, ladies and gentlemen. Furthermore, most of these Pakistanis came here in the 70s and 80s illegally, and the government turned a blind eye to that illegal immigration. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we don't want to get bogged down in this politics because we have more pressing information and facts to deal with on issues of law. But we just wanted to point out that we don't like the way the United Kingdom is being run. We don't like the way the United Kingdom's been run. It's been run into the ground because we've got incompetent governance. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to keep your focus on the MP that we've just described, because she is an MP for the area of Birmingham in the Ladywood constituency, and we are the constituents of that area. And so I want you to just bear this person in mind, who they are going to try and promote to be the next Labour leader or Conservative or Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Now, having said that, ladies and gentlemen, ignorance of law is no excuse. Ignorance of law is no excuse. So you cannot use as a defense that you did not know the law. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I stole £365,000 and a criminal complaint was made to the police, the public would expect the police to investigate that significant amount of money that's been taken unlawfully, and if necessary, carry out arrests and prosecute those who have committed the offence, the criminal offence, ladies and gentlemen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as far as we're concerned, West Midlands Police are involved in organised crime. West Midlands Police at the United Kingdom, England, is involved in organised crime. Either that, ladies and gentlemen, or they are incompetent, or they are choosing who to apply the law to and who not to apply the law. So we have discrimination against members of the public on the basis of the colour of their skin, their status, etc. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we made a complaint to West Midlands Police that £365,000 had been stolen by these corrupt lawyers who has refused to place that money that they are not entitled to have in their control into our bank accounts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a criminal theft of a substantial amount of money. And when we made a complaint to West Midlands Police, this is the response that we got from West Midlands Police in an email, ladies and gentlemen. Take a look at this. Now, it states here, this is the response that we got through the email. You submitted online a report via West Midlands Police website on the 7th of the 10th, 2025. Having reviewed your report, we are sorry to inform you this incident is not a police matter. You are advised to seek legal advice from a solicitor and citizen advice. You will not receive a crime number. So this is West Midlands Police clearly stating that this is not a crime and advising me to seek legal advice. It's not a criminal matter. It's not a police matter, ladies and gentlemen. So, ladies and gentlemen, the theft of £365,000 by these corrupt solicitors is not a criminal offence. It's not a criminal offence to thieve from someone a substantial amount of money that doesn't belong to you. That's not a criminal offence at the United Kingdom, ladies and gentlemen. Well, this is the Theft Act, ladies and gentlemen, and it quite clearly states a person guilty of theft if he dishonestly appropriates property belonging to another. So this is the statute, ladies and gentlemen, and it is an indictable offence. A person guilty of theft shall, on conviction, on indictment, be liable to imprisonment. So, ladies and gentlemen, what does this mean? What does this say about the way Birmingham is being run? Not only that, ladies and gentlemen, we have made complaints of a blatant criminal abduction and exploitation of our children by these organised criminals embedded in our public services. And nothing has been done. This is the response that we get from a police organisation that has a duty of care not only to my children, but to myself and all members of the public. And what I've just shown you, ladies and gentlemen, is the police refusing to carry out their duty. Refusing to carry out their duty. We have clearly shown you the statutory legislation which they are obligated to apply to themselves. Not members of the public, but to themselves, ladies and gentlemen. That property that is gained dishonestly is an indictable offence. And they have told us that it is not a police matter in an email, ladies and gentlemen. What does that say about the United Kingdom? Now, ladies and gentlemen, when we have made complaints to this Member of Parliament, Shabina Mahmood, who is the MP for this constituency, she, in her letter, in her responded letter to us, stated that this is not a concern that she can deal with. So we have a Member of Parliament in a significant role of government who doesn't believe that the issues of child abduction and exploitation and the criminal theft of a significant amount of money, £365,000, is worthy of her attention. And yet these are the people who they want to promote to run this country. So in the area of Birmingham, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot get justice. We cannot get access to justice. Our rights are not being secured. To put it bluntly, ladies and gentlemen, we as members of the public are at risk. Ladies and gentlemen, the police have all the resources, effort and time to be on the streets, stopping the public in their motor vehicles, checking for their insurance, license and registration. They have all the time to do this, ladies and gentlemen. This is all they seem to do. And the worst thing about it, ladies and gentlemen, is that the police doesn't have any authority to stop people simply to check if they've got insurance. They do not have this authority, ladies and gentlemen. They are assuming authority that they do not have. The Road Traffic Act gives the police powers not to abuse them in the way that we have seen them doing on TikTok and YouTube channels. Stopping motor vehicles and telling members of the public that they have the powers under the Road Traffic Act. Yes, they do, ladies and gentlemen, but the way in which those powers are being applied is incompetent, unlawful. For example, ladies and gentlemen, under the Road Traffic Act, the police have the powers to stop motor vehicles, but not for just checking if the person's got insurance. That's not what the Act states. It simply states the police can stop a motor vehicle, but not for no reason, ladies and gentlemen. Not for no reason. And neither does it say that the police can stop the motor vehicle and check to see whether the person has insurance. The checking of insurance is a completely different section of the Act. They're not together, but the police are applying the statute as if they are with each other. So they'll stop the vehicle and then say to provide their license. But the law, the statute, doesn't give them that power to stop a motor vehicle to simply check for insurance details. That's not what the Act states. But that's what the police have been doing, misinterpreting the Road Traffic Act. And lawyers and barristers have not advised the police. They have not advised the courts. And the public does not know that the police are in the wrong. Because we have this incompetence in the legal system. Ladies and gentlemen, the Moorish Society would like to inform members of the public that the police, regardless of what city, does not have powers to stop motor vehicles just to simply check whether or not that person has insurance or tax. They do not have this power. Now, the police will say they do, but they don't, ladies and gentlemen. All the police are doing is using violence against you, not law. Using violence. But the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, in the Road Traffic Act, the sections in which the police have powers to apply are not consecutive. They are not consecutive, ladies and gentlemen. They do not apply one after each another. So the police have no powers to stop a motor vehicle under the Road Traffic Act and then consecutively apply other sections without justifiable reasons to do so. So the police do not have the power to just stop the motor vehicle and say, we're just stopping you to check that you've got insurance. They have no powers to do this, ladies and gentlemen. That is not the proper interpretation of the Act. And ignorance of their law is no excuse. They should know this. Police authorities have legal departments, so there is no excuse for them not understanding how to apply this Act. And the public, ladies and gentlemen, are getting frustrated with the police because the public knows there's something wrong in the way they've been stopped. And you see it in the YouTube and TikTok videos. However, ladies and gentlemen, because the legal profession is incompetent of advising properly the public on these issues, or the police or the courts on these issues. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, the police are performing their duty badly. And that's why you get this civil unrest when police constables stop motor vehicles. So we, the Moorish Society, are providing this information free of charge. The police have no powers to stop motor vehicles to simply check to see whether or not a person has insurance. Ladies and gentlemen, be in no doubt, the Moorish Society is not advising anyone to drive without insurance or the ability to compensate a third party should you get into an accident. This is not what we are saying. Because under common law, it is an offence. But what we are saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that the police stopping motor vehicles and telling the people that they have the powers to just simply stop a motor vehicle and ask for insurance documents without any justification for doing so consecutively is the improper interpretation and application of those powers. A police constable can stop a motor vehicle, yes. But what for? Does he have any reasonable cause to believe the person driving that motor vehicle does not have insurance? Otherwise, why is he stopping the motor vehicle? Furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, 143, having no insurance under the Road Traffic Act, is a civil matter. So why are police enforcing a civil violation under common law? It is a civil matter not to have insurance, not criminal. And nowhere in the Road Traffic Act under 143 for having no insurance does it state it is criminal. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the problem we have. When the police are simply just stopping motor vehicles and saying to the people, we can stop the motor vehicle and ask for insurance documents under the Road Traffic Act, as if the sections run consecutively with each other. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we mean by the United Kingdom. It's been run incompetently. We can't get access to justice. Our rights are not being protected. The police are violent. We got judges who are making unauthorized orders, especially in these child trafficking court venues called the family court, where they are exploiting children over the years. And no one's done anything about it. No one. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Kingdom is the Jacobite Union, and the flag that flies over these kingdoms is called the Jacobite Union flag. We, otherwise known as West Indians, are Jacobite, Moabite blood. We didn't just arrive in the United Kingdom in the 1940s after the white Europeans destroyed this country in their World War II. We were here hundreds of years, ladies and gentlemen, as far back as the 15, 14, 16, and 1700s. We are Jacobites. We are Jacobites, ladies and gentlemen. And this flag, the Jacobite Union flag, otherwise known as the Union Jack, is our flag by descent. And if these white Europeans take the time to research history, they will find that King James, or otherwise known as King James, his original name is King Jacob, who had two sons, King Carlos I and King Carlos II. These are Jacobite kings from the house of Stuart. Ladies and gentlemen, we need not say more. We are the Moorish society.